You've probably been told that desire is the engine of manifestation. Want hard enough, dream big enough, and the universe will somehow reward the intensity of your craving. But here's the subtle misalignment: wanting isn't the same as aligning. In fact, in the quantum field, wanting often encodes the very opposite of what you think you're broadcasting. It sends out a steady signal of lack. Pause for a moment and notice the quality of wanting inside your body. It isn't spacious, it's tight, contracted, buzzing with urgency. That contraction is exactly what your nervous system learns to hold as your baseline. And because the field reflects your mere baseline rather than your wish list, it keeps echoing back circumstances that match the contraction. You say, "I want love," but your body hums with the frequency of unworthiness. You repeat, "I want abundance," but your chest contracts with the pulse of scarcity. The field doesn't translate the words, it mirrors the pulse. Here's the quiet pivot. Instead of asking, "What do I want?" shift the question to, "What identity am I rehearsing every day?" Because the version of you who already has the relationship, the freedom, the stability, doesn't wake up vibrating lack. That version radiates wholeness, not urgency. The difference is subtle, but once you feel it, it becomes impossible to ignore. Think of a radio dial. When you're stuck in wanting, your hand keeps flicking back and forth between stations, never locking onto a clear broadcast. Static fills the space. The music you hope to hear is technically there, but you never hold still long enough to receive it. Being, on the other hand, is what happens when you stop twitching the dial. You let it click into place. Suddenly the song is crisp, unbroken, effortless. Nothing outside has changed. The field was always broadcasting, but you finally stabilized yourself long enough to hear it. Zoom out, then look again. Every ritual you've ever tried, every affirmation, every vision board, none of them were useless. They revealed the deeper pattern you were in. They showed you whether you were practicing the identity of not there yet or embodying already arrived. The difference is not cosmetic. In the quantum field, it determines which timeline you collapse into form. So here is the paradox: the more desperately you push, the further the outcome slips. Not because the field is cruel, but because your effort is a declaration that you don't yet possess. The mirror can't help but agree. But when you let wanting soften into being, your field clears. You no longer whisper it's missing. You radiate it's here. And the field, sensitive, responsive, unflinching, organizes itself around that coherence. This section isn't about rejecting desire. Desire is natural, it's expansive. What we're dismantling is the subtle distortion of wanting. Desire says, "It would be beautiful to live this." Wanting says, "I can't be okay without this." The first opens the field. The second fogs it. You can feel the difference already. Anchor the upgrade. Begin to notice every time you use the word want in your thoughts. Translate it immediately into being. Instead of "I want peace," shift to "I live peace." Instead of "I want security," shift to "I carry stability." Even if your mind resists, let your body test the resonance. Over time, the shift from wanting to being will stop feeling like a stretch and start feeling like the only natural state. This is where the journey begins. In the next section, we'll explore how the quantum collapse actually happens when your field is calm, and why the physics of stillness reveal more about manifestation than any technique ever could. And now that you've felt the subtle difference between wanting and being, let's walk deeper into the mechanics of how reality actually condenses around you. Because the shift doesn't end with identity. The field responds not only to who you are, but to the stability with which you hold it. This is where the mystery of collapse becomes simple, when you understand calm as the ultimate catalyst. Think of it this way: every moment, your life is surrounded by countless possibilities. like clouds drifting across a vast sky. Each potential exists, but none is solid until your consciousness steadies. Collapse is what happens when the wave of possibilities locks into one expression. And here's the paradox: the lock doesn't click under pressure. It clicks when your system eases. Calm is the hinge. Picture a lake. When the surface is restless, everything reflected looks broken, trees become jagged. Stars smear into ribbons, the moon ripples into fragments. But when the wind stills, the lake becomes a mirror. The reflection sharpens, not because the sky changed, but because the surface stabilized. The quantum field is that lake. Your signal is the wind. Calm is what allows the picture to finally come through. Here's the quiet pivot: manifestation doesn't require you to shout louder or push harder. It requires you to become clear enough to let the reflection settle. That's why some of your most vivid insights arrived when you weren't trying, walking without agenda, showering, drifting before sleep. Your body softened, your breath slowed, your field found coherence. And in that moment, the collapse occurred. Zoom out for a second. Think about how many times you've forced solutions. The more you clutched, the more tangled everything became. And then, later, when you stopped obsessing, the answer surfaced as if it had been waiting the whole time. That's collapse revealing itself through calm. You didn't conjure it by force, you allowed it by coherence. Now translate this into your body right now. Notice the difference between the inhale and the exhale. The inhale gathers, but the exhale releases. Collapse happens most easily on the exhale, because your nervous system reads it as safety, and safety is the very condition the field requires to harmonize. No amount of strain can substitute for the authority of safety. When you are safe, the field says yes. Strip away another layer. Calm doesn't mean inaction. It doesn't mean you ignore responsibilities. It means that action flows without the static of desperation. You still answer the call, send the message, show up in the world, but your presence is broadcast in one frequency, not fractured across a dozen. That steadiness is what makes collapse reliable. Test this as an experiment. The next time you feel yourself grasping, pause. Drop your shoulders. Breathe 3 long exhales. Let your chest expand on the out-breath rather than clutch on the in-breath. Then move again. You will notice conversations bend, timing shift, even subtle gestures from others that match your steadiness. Nothing external has been rearranged, and yet everything is. The lever is coherence. Bring it closer to daily life. Imagine your personal signal as a radio station broadcasting around the clock. If your field is scrambled, static dominates and collapse mirrors static. If your field is tuned, music fills the air and collapse mirrors harmony. The broadcast doesn't need to scream, it needs to stay consistent. The universe is not grading your volume, it's responding to your stability. Anchor this upgrade now. Begin to view calm not as absence, but as precision technology. Each time you relax the unnecessary tension, you sharpen the signal. Each time you sharpen the signal, you shorten the gap between possibility and presence. You stop chasing the song, and instead, you hold the note long enough for the world to harmonize with you. So as we move forward, remember the collapse isn't a mystery reserved for mystics. It is the natural behavior of a calm field. And the calmer your inner world becomes, the faster outer forms arrange themselves around it. In the next section, we'll uncover the hidden noise that leaks your coherence, the small, unnoticed habits that blur your signal, and we'll learn how to seal those leaks so that calm can actually stay consistent. Because collapse isn't just a momentary event, it's a rhythm you can live in. You've seen how calm sharpens the signal, how collapse naturally happens when the inner waters are still. Now it's time to map the places where noise sneaks in, because coherence doesn't just vanish on its own, it leaks. And if you don't know where the leaks are, you'll keep patching the wrong spots, wondering why the field keeps echoing static. Noise is subtle. It isn't only the loud chatter of fear or doubt. Sometimes it's the constant checking of your phone first thing in the morning, flooding your nervous system with comparisons before you've even anchored yourself. Sometimes it's scrolling through endless updates, measuring your timeline against the curated highlights of others. Each small act may feel harmless, but energetically, they create static. They tangle your frequency with variables you were never meant to carry. Here's the quiet pivot: coherence isn't just about thinking positively or keeping faith. It's about clearing the clutter that muddies your field. Imagine your signal as light passing through glass. If the glass is clean, the light shines crisp and strong. If the glass is smudged, the light scatters. It's not that the source dimmed, it's that the path became foggy. Your life feels like that when you let unfiltered noise dominate your mornings, your thoughts, your choices. Zoom out for perspective. Ask yourself, where does my energy leak? Is it in constant analysis, running scenarios in your head until your nervous system forgets what safety feels like? Is it in comparison, diluting your field with stories that don't belong to you? Is it in trying to read every sign from the universe like a code to crack, instead of a mirror to feel? All of these behaviors broadcast confusion, and the quantum field can only mirror confusion back. Now translate this into your body. Feel what happens when you overtrack results. You check if the manifestation is coming, then check again and again. Each check is a small declaration: I don't trust it yet. That declaration has weight. The field listens not to your wish, but to the vibration underneath the wish. And the vibration says uncertainty, static. The collapse hesitates, not because the field resists, but because your signal hasn't stabilized. Strip away another layer. Even posture leaks coherence. Shoulders clenched, jaw tight, breath held shallow. Your body broadcasts urgency before your mouth speaks a word. And because your body is a transmitter, the field reflects urgency right back. You wonder why delays pile up, why conversations misfire, why your timing feels off. But you don't need to fix the outside. Release the grip in your shoulders, and the world starts moving smoother. It's that direct. Test this like a scientist. Spend one day noticing micro leaks. Catch the moment you check your phone before you breathe. Catch the moment you grip the steering wheel tighter than necessary. Catch the moment you compare your pace to someone else's. Each time, pause. Release 1 degree of tension. Breathe. Name it noise. Then let it go. You don't have to fight the habit all at once. Just recognize and release again and again until clarity becomes your baseline. Bring it into daily practice. You might design a morning routine that starts with stillness, not screens. You might choose 1 or 2 affirmations that anchor instead of dozens that scatter. You might hold yourself like a tuning fork, reminding your system that you are the source of coherence, not a collector of validation. These are not rituals of striving. They are hygiene, energetic hygiene, just like brushing your teeth. They prevent buildup that clouds your broadcast. Anchor this upgrade. Begin seeing noise for what it is: interference, not identity. You are not the static, you are the station underneath. The goal is not to eliminate all thought, all emotion, all variation. The goal is to reduce entanglement with what isn't yours to carry. Each release is a patch in your field, a seal on a leak, a step toward sharper resonance. So here's the transition. Coherence doesn't only come from grand revelations. It comes from the small, consistent refusals to let noise define you. In the next section, we'll flip the common approach upside down. We'll see why building identity before techniques is the foundation of effortless manifestation, and how the person you practice being is already bending the field around you. Long before the vision board or the mantra takes shape, you've started to notice where noise leaks out of your field, how static sneaks in through habits, posture, and comparison. Now we turn to the deeper layer identity. Because before any technique can work, the question is always, who are you being while you use it? Identity is the root broadcast. Everything else is just decoration. Here's the shift most people miss. They rush to stack techniques without stabilizing identity. They rehearse affirmations, write endless lists, visualize with intensity, but underneath, they're still identifying as someone lacking, someone waiting, someone incomplete. And so the field responds to the identity, not the tool. That's why one person's simple mantra works like magic, while another person's elaborate ritual feels flat. The field isn't grading the ritual, it's mirroring the identity. Here's the quiet pivot: build identity first. Technique second. Ask yourself, what is the normal emotional posture of the version of me who already lives the reality I desire? Not the highlight reel, not the perfect daydream, but the everyday baseline. Does that version feel relaxed, humorous, curious, generous? Does that version of you walk with a looser jaw, a steadier breath, a sense of already belonging? That's the state to practice. Techniques can reinforce it, but identity makes it magnetic. Zoom out and look at your patterns. If you're rehearsing scarcity, then no number of abundance rituals can override the field. If you're practicing unworthiness, then even the most polished vision board can only echo that static. Identity isn't built in a moment, it's rehearsed daily. Every thought, every posture, every small choice is a rehearsal. And the field isn't fooled by surface scripts. It listens to the rehearsals underneath. Now translate this into your body. Imagine a rope made of 3 strands: thought, feeling, and posture. If one strand frays, the rope weakens. But when all 3 align, the rope can hold extraordinary weight. Identity is braided like that rope. What you think about yourself, what you feel toward yourself, and how you carry yourself physically, they reinforce one another. That braided coherence broadcasts stronger than any single affirmation ever could. Strip away another layer. The truth is, identity doesn't have to be built from scratch. It already exists. The version of you living the desired reality already breathes somewhere in the quantum field. Your task is not to invent it, but to step into rehearsal until it becomes normal. Pretend long enough, and the pretending dissolves into being. Not forced pretending, but gentle rehearsal. Like learning an instrument, you practice until the music plays itself. Test it like a scientist. For the next week, instead of asking, did the manifestation arrive? Ask, how faithfully did I rehearse the identity today? Track posture, track tone of voice. Track the subtle emotions that drift under your words. The more congruent you become, the more the field recognizes one steady signal. Collapse follows naturally. Bring it into daily practice. In the morning, before you reach for your phone, take 30 seconds to embody the future self. Breathe as they would breathe, sit as they would sit. Even sip your water with the calm presence they would carry, then move into your day. Every time you notice static creeping back, pause and braid thought, feeling, and posture back into coherence. That is identity training. That is manifestation at its foundation. Anchor this upgrade. Techniques are not useless, they're amplifiers. But an amplifier only projects what's already there. If your core identity is broadcasting lack, then techniques amplify lack. If your core identity is broadcasting wholeness, then techniques amplify wholeness. The foundation always matters more than the decoration. That's why identity comes first. So here's the transition when you live as the version of you who already carries the outcome. You're not forcing the field, you're matching it. The collapse happens not because of what you do, but because of who you consistently rehearse being. In the next section, we'll ground this identity into a daily stabilizer, a simple protocol that anchors you into the already frequency before the noise of the day even begins. So far, you've seen how wanting leaks lack, how calm unlocks collapse, how noise scatters your field, and how identity steadies the broadcast. Now it's time to ground all of that into a daily stabilizer, a practice so simple that your mind may resist it, yet so coherent that your field cannot ignore it. I call it the already state protocol. Here's the quiet pivot. The way you begin your morning sets the frequency of your entire day. Most people wake up straight into separation, checking notifications, remembering problems, replaying yesterday's stories of limitation. The nervous system gets wired for noise before the body even takes its first sip of water. But if you can claim the first few minutes with intention, you stabilize your broadcast for everything that follows. Step 1 is breath. Not mechanical, but deliberate. Place one hand over your heart. Close your eyes and breathe in for 5 counts. Hold for 5, exhale for 7. Repeat 3 times. Why? Because this rhythm slows your brain waves, shifts you into a relaxed alpha-theta state, and activates the electromagnetic field of your heart. Science confirms that coherence in the heart radiates coherence into the field. In simple terms, your breath is your tuning fork. Step 2 is declaration. Speak 1 or 2 clear realities as if they are already here, not a long list, not desperate pleading, just short, precise statements spoken from presence. Today, I walk in the frequency of abundance. I am the resonance of love. The key isn't the words, it's the vibration behind the words. When you speak from the knowing rather than the craving, your body begins to entrain with that identity. Step 3 is embodiment. Close your eyes and feel it for 90 seconds. That's all. 90 seconds of living as if the state is now. Not straining to visualize every detail, but letting your nervous system catch up to the frequency you are choosing. See it lightly. Feel it deeply. Breathe it into your cells, our cells. You're not doing this to convince the universe. You're doing this to remind yourself it already is. Zoom out for perspective. This practice is not about control, it's about coherence. Your brain may protest, saying, "How can 90 seconds matter?" But coherence compounds. A small, consistent signal is stronger than hours of scattered effort. Just like a laser focuses light into a single powerful beam, 90 seconds of clean coherence penetrates deeper into the field than hours of noisy rituals. Now translate this into your body as you move through the day. Every time you feel the urge to check if it's working, pause. Return to the breath rhythm. Whisper the declaration again. Feel it for just a few breaths. Each return is not failure, it's reinforcement. You're teaching your nervous system what it feels like to live from the already state. Over time, this state stops being practice and starts being baseline. Strip away another layer. Notice how the ego resists simplicity. It whispers, "It can't be that easy. There must be more steps, more complexity, more proof." But that's noise. Complexity feels safer to the mind that's addicted to effort. Simplicity feels threatening because it removes the excuse of striving. But the field doesn't require complication. It requires clarity. And clarity is what this protocol delivers. Test it like a scientist. For 7 mornings, commit to the already state protocol. 3 breaths, 2 declarations, 90 seconds of feeling. Then watch the rest of the day. Notice synchronicities. Notice subtle shifts in timing. Notice how your body feels different even before external results appear. These are not coincidences. They are reflections of coherence stabilizing in your field. Bring it into daily practice with reverence, not rigidity. If you miss a morning, return the next. If you feel nothing at first, keep rehearsing. The power is in the consistency, not the intensity. Just like physical exercise trains muscles over time, energetic rehearsal trains your field. The repetition is what sharpens the signal until the universe has no choice but to reflect it. Anchor this upgrade. The already state protocol is not another task on your list. It's the foundation that clears static before the world has a chance to clutter you. It's not about doing more. It's about starting from being. When you rise in the morning and live the already, you carry that signal into every action, every interaction, every choice. The field doesn't respond to the busyness of your schedule. It responds to the baseline of your state. So here's the transition when you stabilize the already state each morning. You give the field a clear template to mirror. In the next section, we'll explore how to hold that state throughout the day, not by forcing positivity, but by learning the art of emotional neutralization. You'll see how to let feelings move through without losing your frequency, so that coherence becomes not just a morning ritual, but a lifestyle you can live inside of. You've learned how to anchor the already state each morning, how to start the day from being rather than craving. But life doesn't end after sunrise. The world pulls at you emails, conversations, unexpected emotions, and before you know it, the clean signal you broadcast in the morning feels tangled again. This is why you need the art of emotional neutralization, the practice of letting energy pass through without letting it define you. Here's the quiet pivot. Emotional neutralization isn't about shutting down or numbing out. It's about staying available to feel without being ruled by every feeling. You don't become a robot, you become a clear channel. Think of it like weather passing through the sky. Clouds, storms, and rain may appear, but the sky itself remains spacious. Your consciousness is that sky. Emotions are the weather, and coherence means remembering you are the sky, not the storm. Zoom out and notice the patterns. Most people resist emotions or chase them. They resist fear by pretending it's not there. They chase happiness as if joy can be hoarded. Both create noise. Resistance compresses the field. Chasing scatters it. In both cases, your frequency drifts from coherence. But neutralization is different. Neutralization says let the emotion move, but don't hand it the keys to your identity. Now translate this into your body. Imagine a tuning fork struck by sound. The vibration runs through it, but eventually it settles back into silence. Your nervous system works the same way. When doubt or anger strikes, allow the vibration to move through. Breathe, name it, and then let your system return to baseline. You don't suppress it. You don't magnify it. You let it pass. Strip away another layer. Neutralization doesn't mean ignoring red flags or living in denial. It means choosing your anchor before the emotion drags you under. For example, when insecurity whispers, "You're not enough," neutralization responds, "That thought is noise, not my identity." You acknowledge it, then you recenter in the already state. Over time, this practice builds a kind of spiritual muscle memory. You stop reacting to every storm and start returning faster to the calm sky within. Test it like a scientist. The next time you feel triggered, try the 3-step flow notice. Name, normalize. Notice what you feel without judgment. Name it softly: fear, doubt, frustration. Then normalize it by reminding yourself that emotions are natural signals, not permanent truths. You're not broken for feeling. You're human. The field isn't listening to the temporary surge. It's listening to the consistent baseline you return to afterward. Bring this into daily practice. You might keep a short phrase in your pocket, something that returns you to coherence. For example, this is noise, I am signal. Whisper it when static arises. Or you might use breath as a reset, 3 long exhales, loosening your shoulders each time. These micro-interventions keep your field clear without hours of processing. They turn emotional waves into practice grounds for coherence. Anchor this upgrade. Emotional neutralization gives you authority over your state without demanding perfection. You stop fearing emotions as enemies and start treating them as weather systems, temporary, passing, never stronger than the sky they move through. The more you practice, the more your field learns stability. And the field doesn't reward perfection, it mirrors consistency. So here's the transition once you've learned to neutralize emotions. You stop getting tossed around by every feeling and start walking with steady coherence. In the next section, we'll examine the tension between surrender and control. You'll see why complexity feels safe to the ego, why simplicity feels threatening, and how retraining your nervous system to feel safe in ease is the missing step in living from coherence all day long. You've started to see how emotions can move through you without stealing your coherence. That's a crucial skill, because now we enter one of the deepest paradoxes of manifestation, the tension between surrender and control. This is the space where many seekers stall. They cling to complexity, not because it's effective, but because it feels safer to the ego. Simplicity, on the other hand, feels dangerous. And yet, simplicity is the very door to coherence. Here's the quiet pivot: your nervous system has been trained to feel safe in effort. From an early age, you were rewarded for striving, for pushing, for proving. You were taught that outcomes come from stress, not stillness. So when someone tells you that alignment is enough, your body resists. It feels like stepping into free fall. But surrender isn't falling apart. It's falling into trust. And trust is the missing element in most manifestation attempts. Zoom out and trace the pattern. Why does complexity feel comforting? Because when you are busy stacking techniques, filling journals, and repeating rituals, your mind believes it's in control. Control feels like security. The more steps you take, the more proof you give yourself that you're doing something. But the field doesn't respond to proof. It responds to coherence, and sometimes the very rituals that once helped you become the noise that keeps you stuck. Now translate this into your body. Think of how your muscles tighten when you try to control everything: jaw clenched, stomach tight, breath shallow. That tension is the body's way of saying, I don't trust. And because your body is the transmitter, the field echoes that tension back. When you surrender, the opposite happens. Muscles soften, breath lengthens, posture opens. The field receives a broadcast of safety, and coherence stabilizes naturally. Strip away another layer. Surrender doesn't mean giving up or becoming passive. It means releasing the illusion of control so you can anchor in clarity. Think of flying a kite. You don't force the wind, you align the string. Too tight, and the kite snaps. Too loose, and it falls. The art is in the balance, firm enough to guide, loose enough to let the wind carry it. That's surrender in action. Test it like a scientist. For the next week, notice where you cling to control. Maybe you overplan every detail. Maybe you micromanage conversations. Maybe you triple-check outcomes. Each of these habits says, I don't trust the field. Each adds unnecessary complexity. Now experiment. Loosen one grip each day. Leave one detail unforced. Allow one outcome to unfold without interference. Then watch how often simplicity delivers what complexity could not. Bring this into daily practice. You might create a small ritual of release, something physical to signal to your nervous system that it's safe to let go. Write a worry on paper and set it aside. Stretch your hands wide open before bed. Whisper, "It's safe to trust," before you sleep. These simple acts retrain your body to associate ease with safety rather than danger. And once your nervous system feels safe in simplicity, coherence becomes sustainable. Anchor this upgrade. Control belongs to the ego, but coherence belongs to the field. When you surrender control, you don't lose power, you align with a greater intelligence. You stop exhausting yourself with constant proof and instead embody a steady signal. The field doesn't mirror how hard you worked, it mirrors how clearly you broadcast. And surrender is clarity. So here's the transition when you replace control with trust, complexity with simplicity, fear with safety. You unlock a whole new dimension of coherence. In the next section, we'll bring this surrender into motion. You'll learn how to carry coherence through the ordinary flow of daily life, walking, speaking, working, so that your field doesn't just stabilize in rituals but radiates through every step you take. You've begun to taste what surrender feels like, the safety and simplicity, the clarity that comes when you let go of control. But now comes the test of embodiment. Because coherence isn't only for mornings on the cushion or quiet moments before bed. The real mastery is carrying it with you into the motion of daily life, into errands, emails, conversations, even conflicts. This is where coherence matures, where it becomes more than a ritual and turns into a lifestyle. Here's the quiet pivot: your field doesn't pause when you leave meditation. It broadcasts through every glance, every gesture, every tone of voice. You might practice coherence beautifully in silence, but the question is, what do you radiate when you walk into a room, when you answer a message, when you face a difficult task? Embodiment is about letting your baseline remain steady no matter the circumstance. Zoom out and notice the pattern. Most people compartmentalize their practice. They feel aligned in ritual, but fragmented in the flow of life. They meditate on abundance, then complain about bills. They breathe peace in the morning, then argue through the afternoon. The field doesn't separate sacred from ordinary. It simply mirrors the dominant broadcast. Embodiment is choosing to live coherence beyond the ritual, until it bleeds into the way you move through the grocery store, the way you hold yourself in line, the way you speak to a stranger. Now translate this into your body. Pay attention to micro choices. How do your shoulders sit when you walk? Do they broadcast tension or ease? How do your eyes meet others, guarded, rushed, or open, steady? What about your breath as you wait in line? These micro postures may seem small, but they are signals. And the quantum field listens to signals, not schedules. Embodiment is coherence written into your physical language. Strip away another layer. Embodiment isn't about performance. It's not forcing yourself to smile or pretending positivity when you don't feel it. That's just another mask, another form of noise. True embodiment is quiet congruence. It means your inner state and outer expression align. If you feel calm, you move calmly. If you feel grateful, you speak with warmth. It's less about acting and more about letting your baseline flow outward without distortion. Test it like a scientist. For the next 3 days, pick one ordinary activity: walking, washing dishes, answering emails, and practice carrying coherence into it. Before you start, pause for a breath. Re-anchor in the already state, then act. Notice how the task feels different. Notice how others respond differently, even if they can't name why. You're not forcing the world to change. You're shifting the broadcast you bring to it, and the world reflects accordingly. Bring this into daily practice. Choose 3 anchors that remind you to embody coherence throughout the day. Maybe it's every time you touch a doorknob, you relax your shoulders. Every time you check your phone, you take 1 conscious breath. Every time you enter a new space, you remind yourself, I radiate stability. These small cues weave coherence into the fabric of your daily motion. Soon, it stops being practice. It becomes your default frequency. Anchor this upgrade. Embodiment is the bridge between ritual and reality. It proves to your nervous system that coherence is not fragile. It can withstand noise, activity, even stress, and the more you embody it, the more the field recognizes consistency. Remember, the universe doesn't respond to isolated moments of clarity. It responds to the ongoing rhythm of who you are being in motion. So here's the transition. Once coherence moves with you, it becomes unshakable. The next step is learning detachment, the art of caring deeply without clinging tightly, because embodiment gives you stability, but detachment frees you from the weight of outcomes. And when you combine both, your field doesn't just radiate coherence, it radiates freedom. That's what we'll explore next. By now, you've carried coherence into motion. You've seen how it can live in your walk, your voice, your daily choices. But there's one more refinement, one that determines whether you remain free or get pulled back into loops of striving. It's the art of detachment, learning to care deeply without clinging tightly. This is the threshold where your broadcast matures from stability into freedom. Here's the quiet pivot. Detachment doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean you stop caring or that outcomes no longer matter. It means you've learned to hold desire without collapsing into desperation. Detachment is open-handed. It's the difference between gripping something so tightly that it breaks versus holding it gently, allowing it to breathe, to grow, to arrive in its own rhythm. Zoom out and notice the pattern. Most people think they're practicing manifestation, but what they're actually practicing is obsession. They ask, when will it come? Why hasn't it arrived? Each question is a subtle tug on the rope, and every tug creates friction in the field. Detachment, by contrast, loosens the rope. It says, I already know this outcome belongs to me. I don't need to drag it forward. I'll let it meet me. Now translate this into your body. Imagine standing on a runway, waiting for a plane to land. If you fill the runway with clutter, the plane can't touch down. If you keep running up and down the strip, waving your arms frantically, the pilot can't align. But when you clear the space and stand steady, the landing is smooth. Detachment is that cleared runway. It doesn't push, it prepares. Strip away another layer. Detachment is really about trust. You don't release outcomes because you no longer care. You release them because you trust the field to arrange them better than your ego could plan. This is where surrender matures. You stop measuring every detail and instead live as if it's already handled. That posture doesn't repel outcomes, it magnetizes them, because the field can finally mirror a clean, open signal. Test it like a scientist. The next time you notice yourself checking for results, pause and ask, what signal am I broadcasting right now? If the signal is impatience, name it, release it, and return to coherence. You might place a hand on your chest, exhale, and whisper, it's safe to let go. Do this enough times, and detachment becomes a muscle. Each release strengthens your nervous system's trust in simplicity. Bring this into daily practice. One of the simplest ways to rehearse detachment is through micro-releases. At the end of the day, list 3 things you did well, and then deliberately let them go. Don't rehearse them. Don't replay them. Trust that the seed has been planted. Another practice before sleep. Whisper gratitude for outcomes not yet visible. You're not begging. You're acknowledging what's already forming. Gratitude without grip is one of the most powerful broadcasts you can send. Anchor this upgrade. Detachment is freedom. It takes the weight off your shoulders and places it where it belongs in the intelligence of the field. You still care, you still value, but you stop clutching. And paradoxically, that's the moment outcomes accelerate, because the field doesn't mirror your pressure, it mirrors your poise. So here's the transition when you embody detachment. You no longer carry the tension of timelines. You radiate an ease that says, I already know. In the final section, we'll explore how coherence compounds over time, why small, consistent signals reshape reality faster than bursts of obsession, and how to live inside that rhythm until everything you once chased begins to arrive on its own. You've learned how wanting distorts, how calm creates collapse, how noise scatters coherence, how identity roots the signal, how the already state anchors mornings, how emotional neutralization steadies the day, how surrender builds trust, how embodiment moves with you, and how detachment frees outcomes. Now we arrive at the final layer, coherence compounded. This is where the small signals you've practiced begin to stack into a rhythm that reshapes reality from the inside out. Here's the quiet pivot: manifestation isn't a one-time event. It's not about striking the right chord once and hoping the universe echoes it back. It's about learning to play the note consistently enough that reality has no choice but to harmonize. Coherence compounds the way interest compounds in finance. Small, steady deposits of clarity become exponential alignment over time. Zoom out for perspective. Think of the field as a mirror that doesn't just reflect one image but averages the images you show it most consistently. One burst of panic doesn't undo your life. One moment of doubt doesn't cancel your signal. What matters is the accumulation. The field reflects your most rehearsed broadcast. And that's why consistency, not perfection, is the real secret. Now translate this into your body. Consider the difference between running a sprint and training endurance. Anyone can sprint for a short burst, but endurance changes your baseline. Coherence is endurance. When you practice a little every day, morning breath, embodied posture, emotional neutralization, you train your nervous system to sustain alignment. Over time, your baseline rises, and the field reflects not the sprint, but the new baseline. Strip away another layer. Coherence compounded means that the universe begins to anticipate you. Timelines rearrange more quickly because your field no longer wavers. It's like tuning a guitar string over and over until it finally holds pitch. At first, you may need constant adjustment, but eventually, the string stabilizes and the music flows without interruption. That's what happens when coherence becomes your default frequency. Test it like a scientist. Track yourself for 30 days. Don't measure by outcomes. Measure by consistency. Did you breathe into coherence each morning? Did you embody the already state during daily motion? Did you neutralize emotions rather than attach? Did you loosen control and trust simplicity? Each practice is a deposit. At the end of 30 days, you'll notice not just external shifts, but internal ones: greater calm, deeper trust, clearer intuition. These are signs of compounding. Bring this into daily practice. One helpful metaphor is gardening. You don't plant a seed today and demand fruit tomorrow. You water, you weed, you allow sunlight, and over time, growth compounds. Some days, progress is invisible, but compounding is happening underneath. The same is true of coherence. You may not see fireworks, but the roots of reality are rearranging. Trust the slow build. Celebrate the small signals. Anchor this upgrade. Once coherence compounds, you no longer live at the mercy of moods or timelines. You've built a rhythm strong enough to carry you through noise, through doubt, through delay. Outcomes stop being isolated wins and start becoming your lifestyle. What once felt like miracles begins to feel like normal life, not because the magic faded, but because you finally matched the field so consistently that alignment became your home. So here's the closing transition. Coherence isn't a trick, it's a rhythm. And when you live in that rhythm, the field doesn't just deliver outcomes, it begins to move with you, anticipate you, harmonize with you. This is the freedom you were reaching for all along. Not the chase, not the obsession, but the effortless arrival that comes when coherence compounds, until everything you once wanted starts arriving as who you are. Take a breath now. You've walked through 10 layers of coherence, each one revealing a simpler truth beneath the noise. Wanting gave way to being. Calm became the doorway to collapse. Noise revealed itself as interference, not identity. Identity itself became the foundation. The already state showed you how to anchor each morning. Emotional neutralization taught you how to let feelings move without owning them. Surrender replaced control. Embodiment carried coherence into motion. Detachment freed you from the weight of outcomes. And coherence, compounded over time, revealed itself as the rhythm that makes everything align. Here's what matters most. You don't need to master everything at once. Coherence is built the same way music is learned note by note, practice by practice, until the melody lives in your hands. Each breath you take with awareness, each release of noise, each return to the already state is a deposit in the field. And the field doesn't demand perfection, it responds to rhythm. So let this be your rhythm. Wake with presence, move with embodiment, neutralize instead of attaching, surrender instead of gripping, care without clutching. Trust the compounding. The rest will follow. The outcomes will arrive not as prizes, but as reflections of who you've become. As you close this listening, notice how your body feels. Maybe lighter, maybe steadier, maybe simply more aware. That shift is coherence in action. It doesn't shout. It doesn't need spectacle. It's quiet, steady, it's reliable. And that quiet rhythm will carry you further than any ritual performed from fear. So step forward gently. Let today be enough. Let your frequency broadcast with clarity. Let your presence speak louder than your wanting. The field is already listening, already arranging, already reflecting. Your task is not to push. Your task is to remain. Remain in coherence. Remain in trust. Remain in the truth that simplicity was always the key. The rest is already on its way.